Hey everybody, welcome back. It's Cory Jones and Justin Wilson here with Fairly Legal. We're partners in the law firm Jones Wilson. We are excited about our upcoming guests. We're going to hopefully hear from today from our good friend Tim Low from Signature Real Estate. He's going to talk to us about what's going on in the real estate market here in Las Vegas and the surrounding areas. And we're going to ask him some questions, and maybe he's got some additional information that we need to know going forward. It's, he doesn't have a crystal ball. I wish we did, but we're a little nervous about what the future holds too. It's getting a little bit more back to normal. It seems like we went to lunch the other day in that parking lot, and
yeah,
not in the parking, but we went to lunch
not in the parking lot.
Smash Burger over on Eastern, and I shout out to Smash Burger, I guess. And but we went to that parking lot, and it's Eastern and 215. And it was surprisingly busy. I mean, that it seemed normal. It seemed like, okay, you couldn't find a parking space, and
busy, especially for a Saturday.
Yeah,
I mean, it was a Saturday and it was pretty busy.
It was great. So I was encouraged by that, and it seems like things are kind of getting back to normal. But then I drive down the street, and then by our office, there's 1, 2, 3 pretty big restaurants that are not going to reopen. I mean, they closed down when the quarantine started, and they're not going to reopen.
And that's been one of the toughest things for a lot of you. Have probably seen restaurants in particular that have gone out of business. I mean, we're going to see a number of them. I saw Steinmart right over off Stephanie in Henderson is not reopening. They're closing up shop.
Really? I did not know that. Okay.
Yeah, I saw a sign for Steinmart. The Fiesta Hotel Casino has not reopened, and I'm not sure what the plan is there with them. Everyone keeps talking about how we're going to come back better than ever. I have no idea what that looks like. I'm dying to know what that actually looks like, because I would love to see it come back better, but I don't know what that actually is going to look like.
No, I mean, I don't know how we can come back better. I mean, at least in the short run, better than ever, because everything's online, and there's just nothing inside the store. We walked into like an Office Depot or Office Max or something, and the shelves are empty. They're like, 5 office chairs.
It does make the question. It begs the question of like, how many of you are out there exclusively shopping online? Because it kind of feels like a lot of those stores are pushing people to shop online, which still to some degree, I'll be the first to say, I do not like it. I like being able to go and grabbing something and looking at it and decide whether I like it or not. So internet shopping has never been ideal for me, but it seems like that's kind of where everybody's pushing us.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Like, especially when I buy something like I have the Nike app, and so I look at shoes on the Nike app, and I ordered a pair of shoes, and I thought they were just gonna be fantastic. They're the best shoes in the world, and they came, and I'm like, I don't know if I like them. There's something to be said about like looking at a pair of shoes or a shirt or whatever and trying it on and going, oh, yeah, because I don't mind buying it online, but I hate returning it.
Right. And when I honestly, I am not a huge fan of clothes or shoes that I buy online, because if you get it, and if you get it and you don't like it, if it doesn't fit quite right, then you got to go through this whole process of shipping it back to them. Drives you crazy. And
then I end up with a pair of shorts that literally do not fit me.
You almost just cave. I'm like, it's like, I'm done. I'm okay. I'll just throw it in the box somewhere.
Yeah.
There's still construction going on.
I know.
And I sit back and think there are certain aspects of life that don't seem like anything's changing. And then other things seem like we're having massive changes. So it's like, where really are we? I mean, are we everything normal, or is everything absolutely kind of on the razor's edge where we're just kind of moving along?
I know with the unemployment benefits continuing, eviction stayed. I don't think the real impact of all this has hit us yet. I feel like we're still in this artificial bubble, and we're just waiting for things to happen. And I mean, I'm scared to spend money on anything, really, anything big. I mean, they're like, do you want fries with that? And I'm like, oh, I don't know. I better tie my belt. I don't know.
Be careful. I don't want extra fries. I mean, I'm not going to go large.
That's just a supersize. Like, it's just this small.
Let's keep it normal.
Do they even have
the regular size?
They don't even have supersize anymore. That movie, I think, ruined the supersize thing.
But that brings us to our segment of the show. Before we bring Tim onto the show, it brings us to our segment where we're going to talk a little bit about personal injury, which is the focus that we do have, which is what do you do if you're in a car accident, particularly right now? During the era of COVID, does anything change when you're in a car accident? And the short answer is a little. I mean, you may have to wear a mask for certain things, but those services that still exist with the police department, those still exist, and they're still in full force and effect. So let's go through a little bit about the steps of what you should do when you're in a car accident, because sometimes people do things that they think they're doing something in their favor, and what they're really doing is causing a tremendous traffic jam. They're causing grief for themselves and for others, and they're really not doing anything for the benefit of their claim.
Yeah, and there's all kind. It drives me crazy when I see somebody who's in a relatively minor accident and they flat out refuse to move their vehicle until the police get there. And the first thing the police are going to do when they get there is say, "Could you move your car?"
Yeah.
I mean, unless somebody die, I mean, I shouldn't joke about this, but unless there's a fatality, the police are not going to pull out all the stops and investigate this thing. They're going to basically go, yeah, it looks like it was your fault. Here's a ticket, or I don't know. There's conflicting stories. I'm not going to cite anyone. But at the end of the day, move your car. Be courteous.
Here's the deal. If you can move your car and the other person's car, move. 9 times out of 10, what kind of car accidents you're going to get in where you can move both cars is probably a rear end collision. Both cars are movable. Move them off to the emergency lane. Just get them out of the way so that traffic can begin to flow again. That's number one.
And not even just the traffic, but it's dangerous. I mean, somebody may not realize that there's traffic stopped up ahead. You may cause another accident behind you because you refuse to move your car. So
and I say it this way, because let's all admit, I mean, you get hit, your first move is to get out of your car, go back and check your property damage. And it's okay, I mean, to do that, obviously. You want to go back and check real quick, but don't linger. Don't sit back and go, okay, now we got to exchange our information and take pictures all there right in that spot. It's once you see and identify that, hey, the person is stopped, they're with you, just point to where we're going to park, go off to either a parking lot or an emergency lane, somewhere that's safe to park, and so that you can do all the information that we're about to talk about. Because you can't do all this stuff if you're literally still in a place of danger. And that's in the middle of the roadway.
Yeah. And you know, Justin was talking about the majority of car accidents are rear end accidents, or somebody hits you from behind. And people think that we're going to spend all of our time in a legal case talking about who's at fault. If you get hit from behind, there's like a 99.9% chance that the person who hit you is responsible for the accident. I think I've had one case in the entire time I've been practicing where my client rear-ended somebody else and the other person was found responsible, and that's because they didn't know where they were going and they just stopped in the middle of the road.
There's going to be some crazy story.
Yeah. And it was an old woman who admitted, I didn't know where I was going, so I just panicked and I stopped. But other than that, if you get hit from behind, it's the other party's fault.
So move your vehicle. If you're able, move the vehicles to a safe place and park it. That way you're out of the way of the traffic. And then that moves us to the next thing that you can do. The first thing is you can begin to do is figure out, and you're going to kind of figure out when you first get out of the vehicle, is there any animosity between you and the other driver? If the other driver is coming out swearing, if they're being loud and vocal, I mean, you may want to feel like I need to call the police now just to protect yourself. That's kind of a judgment call, because not every call the police want to come out to. If you've been rear-ended and there's some property damage, but both vehicles are drivable, you can easily exchange information. The police would rather you do that and move on than take their time. I mean, I've had clients come to me that said I was going to wait for the police officer, and they waited an hour and a half before any officer showed up. Yeah. I mean, that's a thing. And the officers do not necessarily want to show up if there's not what you would call really significant and serious property damage. I mean, car parts strewn across the road. When that's not happening and both cars are drivable, even the police would say they'd prefer you exchange information and then just move on.
Yeah, and it's a common misconception about police reports. People assume that if the police come in and issue a citation, well, that's it. It's definitive. Um, One, unless the police officer witnessed the actual accident, he really can't even testify about the accident because it's hearsay. And the police report, the findings of the police officer, all of that's hearsay, will not come into evidence for the most part. There might be some aspect of the report that's in dispute, and that one little aspect can come into play, but it has to be something that the police officer personally witnessed, not he. The police is going to hear one person's version of the facts, and then he's going to listen to the other person's version of the facts. A lot of times they'll make a decision based on that, and they'll give somebody a ticket based on their, curbside judicial process that they have. But the reality is, who cares what the police officer thinks? You have the right to get witnesses. You have the right to put on your other evidence. And the police officer is just trying to make a quick determination. And if it's up in the air, a lot of times the police officer will just go, hey, look, I don't know. I'm just going to put this stuff in the report. I'm not going to give anybody a citation. I don't know who was at fault, whatever. And they'll just go.
And to some degree, what we're talking about, it is fact specific. There are certain things that are going to happen that might change some of the things that we would be talking about. In your standard rear end motor vehicle collision, where someone's at a stoplight or a stop sign and they get rear-ended from behind, what we're going to talk about right now, the stuff we're talking about, that applies to you in 90% of the claims. If you're driving through an intersection and somebody turns in front of you, turning left, or someone comes across and T-bones you, that may change some things, because now we may be dealing with a far more significant collision. And in those situations, all of a sudden, you can't drive the car. You can't just pull off and park. We totally recognize that. What we're talking about is really the majority of claims where there's a whole lot of control. You get hit, but both cars are still drivable. There's a lot of control here. You get off to the safe where it's safe. And then here's the kicker. This is the information you got to make sure you get. You need to make sure that you take photographs of your car and the other person's vehicle, get the other person's license plate in that photograph, get the other person's a photograph of their driver's license, their auto insurance, if they have those little cards that shows proof of insurance, get a photograph of that. And those are some key things, because sometimes people, they get there and they start talking to the other person, and the other person says, oh, I'm sorry, I hit you. I'm going to help you out. I'm going to make sure I take care of this. And then they don't give you the information you have to be able to make a claim here.
And what will happen many times too is, at the accident scene, the person who hits you will be super apologetic. They're like, oh, I'm so sorry. It was totally my fault. Oh yeah, I felt terrible. Then they go back, they call into their insurance company to let them know what's happened. Hey, I got in an accident. Then the insurance company will start asking them questions. Well, are you sure that it was your fault? I mean, you should. And then the person starts going, that's a good point. Maybe it wasn't my fault. And then all of a sudden they turn the person completely around, and then they're going, you know what? I was a little hasty. It wasn't my fault after all.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And that's happened many times to me.
I literally just had a case a couple months that came in. My client was driving. The person was in front of them, had turned, and then backed up into the roadway because they had made the wrong turn. My client hit them as they backed up. The person got out, was very apologetic. I'm so sorry. I can't believe I did that. I just got lost to where I was. And so I had to back up, and I didn't realize you were behind me. Then all of a sudden, she's talking to the insurance carrier, and the insurance carrier is saying, well, our driver is now telling us that he never made the turn. He was just sitting there and you ran behind him. So people change stories all the time. From the moment of the collision to a couple of days later.
If there's a witness who saw this, even if they don't want to stick around, get their business card, get their phone number, get their license plate, get any information you can about the witness, because it all comes down to witness testimony and these things. If you get a witness who says, oh yeah, I saw this and it was their fault, that usually seals the deal. It's critical to get those witnesses rounded up.
The problem that most people have is they have a witness who's in their favor. They spoke to him at the scene, and then that driver drove off and no one got any of their contact information. And I've got a client sitting there telling me they want to tell the police about this witness who saw the whole thing. And when you say, well, who was it? Well, its name was Steve or, whatever. And I'm like, oh, do you have a phone number? No, I didn't get that. No, do you have anything? I mean, do you have any way for me to contact him? No. We got to make sure that when witnesses are there, you get their information so that somebody other than you can contact them later.
Yeah, because it's not like you can go to court and say, oh, well, the witness said, as soon as you say that, well, the witness said, the other attorney's going to jump up and go, well, objection, hearsay, and every judge on the planet's going to go, sustained. That's hearsay. That's textbook hearsay. You can't talk about what somebody else saw or perceived at the scene of the accident. That person needs to come in himself and testify, hey, I saw this is what I saw, and then this happened. That's acceptable. But if you don't get that witness information,
and then when it comes to other than witnesses, so you've got your witnesses. When you do take photographs, take long scale photographs. I've had clients that have come to me with photographs on their phone, and they're super close-ups of like the dings in the bumper. And I can't even tell what the angle is of anything. Make sure that you get a nice, like Cory said, photographs are not the end all be all. They're really just designed so that they can set a stage for us, or even for you if you're handling your own claim, to explain a picture, to say, here's kind of what was going on at that time. If the photo's too close, you can't tell the story. I mean, there's no story to tell because all we're looking at is some scrapes.
And realistically, you're going to have access to your car after the fact. You can go home. If all you're photographing is the damage to your vehicle and just drive it, well, take it home at your leisure, go ahead, walk around the car. You'll see gaps between the trunk and the rear, and the quarter panel. I didn't notice that at the scene. And you'll see maybe the exhaust got bent that you didn't notice that at the scene. You have all the time in the world to look at your car. What you won't have time to do is photograph that other vehicle. And sometimes that's critical. A lot of times, especially in rear end accidents, the damage to your car is negligible. It doesn't look like that much. The other car has got fluids leaking out of the front and the front end smashed. And that photograph of the other vehicle that hit you can be the difference between settling the case and having to litigate to get that information later. So if you have that picture, and I can send that to the insurance company and say, hey, they say, because that's their go-to argument. Oh, there's no damage to your vehicle. You go, oh, well, look at this photo of your client's or your insured's vehicle, and it's hammered. Then that argument goes out the window, and then we're not talking about that anymore.
I had a case once where my client was driving a Chevy Tahoe, and there's very little property damage to their Tahoe. It was the bumper was bent down, and so the idea was it just wasn't that bad of an impact. Well, my client had taken one photo of the other person's vehicle, and that was the only photo that was ever taken of the other person's vehicle. That guy's vehicle, his battery had shot out through the hood. I mean, it was so much force. It had smashed his car, and there was a big hole in the hood where the battery had just shot straight out of. Fluid was everywhere. I mean, this was clearly a significant smash. I mean, his truck was smashed. It just happened. It didn't look that bad. If it was, and everyone just wanted to tell me about my client's Tahoe and the limited property damage. And I said, well, that force went somewhere. I mean, it was all going forward. My client was hurt pretty bad.
Yeah. When we litigate cases, by and large, they are cases where we have low impact and minimal property damage. And those photographs are critical of the other vehicle because, the defense lawyer who works for the insurance company, we always make this joke. They hold themselves out as great lawyers, but basically at the end of the day, all they do is hold up a big picture of the vehicle and go, come on. I mean,
who could have been hurt?
Who could have been hurt in that? But when you can show the other vehicle and it's completely smashed, you're like, maybe this guy. Even if you don't call the police, there are requirements that you file a police report. So if you don't call the police at the time of the accident, go to the closest substation, the local substation near you, and go in there and fill out an incident report, a police report with them, documenting that the accident happened. And there are some statutes that require you to have provided a police report if there's injuries or if there's damage over a certain amount. So it's important to fill out a police report, even if the police don't show up at the scene.
And then that really comes into play, especially when you make your claim. Cory and I have had situations where our clients have gone in, they filled out their police reports, they come back and we're making a claim. And it turns out the person that hit them, who told them, I apologize, I can't believe I did this, they haven't told anybody about this collision. They didn't tell their insurance carrier. So you were never going to get a phone call from an insurance company to start the process of dealing with your car, getting it fixed, because the guy that hit you hadn't told their insurance carrier. So it's all kind of steps that you take and you kind of put things together, kind of like baking a cake. It's a recipe. You got to make sure you follow those steps, or you don't always get a very good tasting cake.
You know, something that'll happen at the scene, if the police do show up, they're going to ask you, do you need medical help? You know, do you need an ambulance? And this comes up all the time at trial too. You know, they'll say, are you okay? And we say, yeah, I'm okay. That doesn't mean you're 100% pain-free, healthy, perfect. I'm okay means, okay, I'm not bleeding, everything's attached. Generally I'm not, no one's gonna die. You know, I don't need an ambulance. That's what, when we say, are you okay? That means I don't need you to call an ambulance.
I tell people all the time, and it comes up in trials a lot, and that is, if you're in a car accident and someone comes up to you and says, are you okay? That's not the question you heard. The question you heard is, do I need to call you an ambulance? That's the question you heard. And so Cory's right. You don't necessarily need to go and get an ambulance, but that is a question that comes up, and how you handle that question is an issue, because Cory and I have seen that question hammered with people. You told the witnesses at the scene that you were okay.
Yeah, and the other thing they hit you with is, did you make any pain complaints at the scene of the accident? Well, I mean, people don't want to be a baby about it. I mean, they're generally okay. They're so grateful that it wasn't worse than it was. They're not bleeding. They don't feel like, they're going to die or anything. But they are already feeling the effects of the accident. And most of our clients, I'll be honest, most of our clients don't feel anything until the next morning, because your adrenaline's kicked in. You had this accident and,
Right.
and you're just going, but the next morning you feel it. But if you're feeling it at the scene, mention it. Be a baby. Mention that, yeah, you know what, I am feeling something. Complain of something at the scene, because if you're feeling it at the scene, the next day it's going to be significantly worse. And if it's not, no big deal. But if it is, at least you've complained at the scene, because I can't tell you how many times the other driver, the at-fault driver, will go, well, they told me they were fine. They said they didn't have any problems. If you made a complaint and the police have documented that, that's there forever. They can't go back on that.
And if you're worried about ambulances and the bill that comes with an ambulance, you can tell them, hey, you know what, I'm gonna drive myself. I'll have somebody take me to the emergency room. You don't have to take an ambulance. A lot of people, their big concern when it comes to ambulances is the bill that follows, and we totally appreciate that. If you don't want that and you feel like, hey, I'm sore, you can drive yourself. And as long as that's documented, you're good. Just say, you know what, I'll see myself to an urgent care or to an emergency room.
Yeah, and again, that's an argument that defense lawyers will try to use against you. They'll try to say, well, you didn't take an ambulance, did you? You refused an ambulance. They don't get much mileage out of that, I don't think, because most people realize, well, my car's here. What am I going to do with my car? I don't have anyone to call. It's the middle of the day. It's a hassle. It's an extra expense. I'm not dying. I can go home, drop my car off, and have my husband or my wife or my son or daughter or friend or whoever take me to the hospital. At that point, jurors are pretty understanding about you not taking an ambulance to the scene. But the defense lawyers always say, well, you weren't transported. You were asked if you needed an ambulance. You said no. Okay.
Yeah, it comes up all the time during the course of litigation.
Yeah.
We would also highlight that if you are feeling ill, you don't feel good, your neck starts to hurt, whether it's that day or the next day, go to an urgent care, go to an emergency room.
Go to an urgent care, go to the emergency room, get medical treatment. Don't wait.
Yeah, you don't wait. because what happens is people sit back and think, I'm going to take some ibuprofen and I'm going to wait a few days and see if it goes away on its own. And I will tell you, better, because if it doesn't, and all of a sudden you do feel bad and you want to go in after that, you're going to get just basically attacked by the insurance adjuster and the attorneys involved. They're going to attack you for what we call this gap in time from the day of the collision to the day you decided to go seek medical attention for the first time. So if you're aching at all, don't allow there to be a gap. Just go to the emergency room, go to an urgent care. Like Cory said, be a little bit of a baby about it. I mean, once you've been injured like this, it's okay to be a little bit of a baby about this. I don't know how many times people come to me and they go, I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be that person who whines and complains. But the reality is the insurance carriers, they will use all of that against you. They won't sit back and go, oh man, I'm so thankful that you don't want to be that guy and we're going to help you out. That does not happen.
Yeah, and it's lose-lose, because if you run to the doctor, they go, oh, you ran right to the doctor. If you wait, they're going to go, well, you had a gap in treatment, so this looks like you just, as an afterthought. They're going to make an argument about you no matter what you do. So err on the side of caution. Go get checked out. A lot of times people will come see us as the first point of contact because they don't know what to do. So they'll come see us, and we'll say, yeah, go get checked out. You know, go to the urgent care, go to the ER. Go to a chiropractor, go see someone to help you deal with the problem. Don't just sit on it, because you think they're going to reward you for being an upstanding, hey, look, I tried to do this on my own, but it didn't work out. You will not get rewarded for that. They will give you no brownie points. They will attack you for delaying. They'll say, well, you must not have been injured if you waited so long. This looks like an afterthought. Go see the doctor, go see somebody, get checked out and make sure you're okay. Just for peace of mind's sake, if nothing else.
Right. It's one of those things where people think they're doing themselves favors because they look at it like, well, I'm trying to be the straight shooter here. And the reality is you get zero credit for being the straight shooter. None.
And, we could go on and on and on about the treatment, but the first time you go, in fact, that's the speech I will give my clients. The first time you see the doctor, I want you to be the biggest baby on the planet, which I don't want you to fake symptoms or be overly dramatic about what's going on. But any little ache, pain, problem you have, I want you to document that with the doctor. I want you to say, well, my neck hurts. I got this bruise on my shoulder. I got this. Be exhaustive about what you're experiencing, because I had clients who initially thought no big deal. And then 2 weeks after the accident, all of a sudden they got pins and needles in their hands. They got pain shooting down their arm. They got a disc injury that didn't show up for a few days after the accident. If they documented that, wow, then it's no big deal. But if you don't document it, I promise you the insurance company is going to look for any way to relate this to something other than this accident that they're responsible for. They will. They've done it. That's the business they're in, unfortunately.
Right. And they always, all of a sudden, insurance adjusters become medical doctors. They become experts in all kinds of the definition of medicine, diagnosing things. Cory and I have these conversations with adjusters all the time. What doctor looked over what we're talking about and came up with the opinions you're giving me? They didn't have a doctor look at this. Yeah. They just looked at it and they just decided on their own. It's how they feel about it. It happens to people all the time. So like Cory said, it's not necessarily you're being a baby. We want to make sure everything is captured in that initial visit, because if you miss something and then all of a sudden it comes up later, they're going to attack you for it. They're going to say, well, wait a second, you didn't bring that up on the first visit. You get no points. So Cory and I cannot stress that enough, that you get 0 points for trying to be the extra tough or trying to say, I can just manage this and I don't want to be that guy. You get no points for that. Yeah. So make sure that you get everything covered.
And because sometimes the pain that you're feeling initially after the accident can mask other symptoms or other problems that you have that are relatively minor. So you focus on the number one thing that's hurting you. For example, it's your neck. Your neck really swung back hard and hit that. But you don't really pay attention to this like dull pain, ache going down your hand, or this numbness and tingling in your fingers, because you're like, this is what's bugging me. This is where I want you to focus. But But the bigger problem is can be the numbness and tingling in your fingers and the pain going down your arm. And you just don't mention it because this is my neck's killing me. That's why it's really critical that you document every single thing that's going on with your body that wasn't going on with your body before the accident happened. I mean, don't, if you had pre-accident problems, don't try to relate those to the car accident. That's horrible. And then you'll end up looking like a liar because they will get all your medical records. They're going to figure out that you were lying about that. But document everything new. Anything that's post-accident, anything new, you want to let the doc know about that.
Yeah. So the most critical thing that you can do when you get into a motor vehicle collision is make sure that as you get out, you look for witnesses that might be there. You take a photo. It's okay to take a photo of how the cars are set right at that moment of impact before you move, but get those cars moved off to the side if you can, get into a safe spot, then get this information: driver's license, insurance information, license plate information about the person that hit you. You got to get that. If you see anybody in the area who might have been a witness, get their information. If you can get that information, whether you have a police report or not, you're already ahead of the game. You're already kind of moving ahead with respect to your claim. And those are critical things that you can get.
Right. Yeah, well, you mentioned earlier about them not reporting the accident. One of the reasons you have to get that insurance card is so that sometimes we're the first report to the insurance company of the accident. The other party doesn't even mention it to their insurance company. They're looking at it hoping you won't, because they're like, not that much damage to my vehicle. I can still drive it. I'm not going to worry about it. They just let it go. It's critical that you have all of that information together. One other thing we didn't mention was make sure you document kind of who else was in the other vehicle. Sometimes there's other people. Sometimes the person who jumps out and talks to you wasn't the driver of the vehicle.
Right.
And sometimes that driver was impaired and they try to do the old switcheroo at the scene. So try to be attentive. Who is driving the vehicle? Figure out what's happening. And I know you're disheveled, your adrenaline's pumping, but try to think about who is actually driving that car, because we've had cases where people have switched and the other driver's impaired and they're trying to just like, oh yeah, we're fine here. Let me get out of this. Sometimes you want to call the police if you think alcohol or drugs may be a part of this formula with the car accident.
And that's particularly true when it's dark. You get into a car accident when it's dark, a lot of things can happen. Like what Cory said, you have impaired drivers, you have people try to kind of switch. They may give you something that's not fully accurate. I've had clients that have been given insurance cards that are ineffective. I mean, they expired a year earlier, and all of a sudden we're having to chase who the actual insurance carrier is on that car. You want an up-to-date current insurance card on that person. And if they don't have one to give, then you make sure that you call the police. That's a situation where you want to make sure that you wait for the police to come. Because if that person does not have an insurance card to give you, they may have insurance, they may not. There's all kinds of issues that may be in play. And you want to make sure that you have a police officer who's arrived to investigate some of it. Why is this person not giving you a current insurance card? That's a big thing. If you see that, you make sure you call the police. That's a situation where the police need to come.
Yeah, and just in general, if things just don't feel right, everything just doesn't feel quite right with what's happening, call the police. Err on the side of caution. If they don't want to wait around for the police, so be it. You can wait around for them. If you've got their insurance information, and if they try to take off, which happens a surprising amount, people will try to just drive off after an accident. And I've have clients who have chased people down, and don't get into a high-speed chase, but get their license plate number, and that actually helps your case. If they actually take off, it can help your case because it makes them look super guilty, like something's wrong. And everyone's been in the situation where they've been hit, and the other driver, if the other driver takes off, it's like, whoa, wait a minute, what's going on? Stop, give them your information, exchange things. It happens. That's why we call it negligence. You didn't do it on purpose. They didn't try to run you down. It happens. That's why we all carry insurance, is because mistakes happen. But if somebody does try to drive away, they're usually impaired, and they're usually trying to avoid the police showing up. They would rather get cited for leaving the scene of an accident than a DUI. So make sure you give the license plate, do whatever you can to identify that vehicle and the driver if possible.
Yeah, if that driver is acting squirrely or they aren't getting out of their car to come talk to you, have your phone at the ready. I mean, sometimes people feel like this other car's driving away and they don't know what to do. If your phone is at the ready, you can get a photograph, take video of the car, of the driver, of the license plate. I mean, things that we can still use to identify that car. If you're under the impression that somebody might hit you and it's not too bad and that they will never run off, eliminate that misconception from your mind. We've had people drive away from what I thought were relatively minor impacts. And I think it's because they were impaired. They were just, they were so worried about the DUI.
Yeah, if somebody drives off, 9 times out of 10, it's because of impairment. They're impaired, and they don't want the police showing up because, or if they're super friendly and come out and talk to you, but you can tell they're impaired because they'll try and talk you out of calling the
Right.
police.
That's the friendly drunk.
Yeah, the happy, friendly drunk who's like, no, we're buddies. Yeah, no, I'll take care of you. It's all, yeah, you may want to call the police because that actually, even though it doesn't have a lot to do with your case, cases usually settle easier if the other driver's impaired because
the insurance carriers wants to be done with it.
Yeah, they want to be done with it because juries hate drunk drivers. They just do. And we've all been impacted in some way, all of us by a drunk driver at some point in our lives. And you're never going to pull a jury in a million years that doesn't have a member of that jury pool who has been impacted, either them or a family member, by a drunk driver. So insurance companies want no part of that. So if you think the person's impaired, you really need to call the police. And you hate to do that. You're like, oh, this person seems nice. I don't want to call the cops on them. But at the end of the day, you have to act in your own best interest. And it's not a good idea to let people like that out on the road. I mean, they could hurt somebody else.
It's totally true. And we hope that this information has been helpful to you. Before we bring Tim on, we want to make sure that you hit subscribe to our channel. If you have any questions, please feel free to add comments or ask questions in the comments section. We're happy to assist in answering those questions. If you're still looking just to troll us, you can do it. We're going to be okay. We're big boys. But we'd love the likes. We'd love to have you hit subscribe and comment and give us some questions.
I feel like we just bombarded you with information too. So that we're going to put a link down at the bottom of this so that you can hit a link to our frequently asked questions page where we talk about what to do in the event of a car accident. It's got the steps laid out for you in order, and you can read that. Maybe even print out a copy and leave it in your glove compartment or something so that when this does happen, if this happens, you can pull it out and follow the instructions.
Right on. So next up, we have Tim.
He is a realtor in Las Vegas, and he's been here for quite some time. He is basically, he's got his finger on the pulse of what's going on. He sells a lot of homes.
There he is.
Hey,
fellas.
This is the infamous Tim Low.
This is Tim Low in the flesh. So tell us, what's going on right now in the real estate market? Like right now, snapshot today, what's going on?
Snapshot of what's going on today is we probably have about 2 months of inventory. Now, this is talking single family homes. I think we were probably at 2.7 months last month. So the inventory keeps shrinking, and a stable market is probably around 4 to 5 months of inventory. And so it's just really thin.
Seems like so many people are furloughed. They have all these financial concerns that are going on in the community and around the state. How does that kind of reflect with respect to the real estate market at the moment?
I think the people that are still employed and that are able to continue to purchase, they're looking at the situation like, hey, if we're going to be stuck at home, we don't have a pool right now. Let's go get a place that's got a pool, or let's go get a place that's got an office. Because now work said I can work from home. That's a big thing for the people back in California coming this way. I mean, man, if they're able to go to a better price point, which their median price is closer to 750,000, where our median price right now is 335. So they're looking at how much bang they can get for their buck. Vegas is, not too far away, and if they don't have to go to their office very often and they can do their meetings like we are now on Zoom, then by all means, I think that's playing a big factor in people moving around. Plus, the interest rates are, man, they're sitting around the 3s right now. I mean, I helped somebody get one not too long ago. It was like 2.9 something, when I went to the title company.
Do you see that? Do you see that there are a lot of buyers out there and there's just not enough inventory for the number of buyers?
That's exactly what's going on right now. So I put a few homes on the market recently, and both ended up with multiple offers. It's just that type of market. If you have something special, say RV parking on the side, pool, um, office casita, man, jump those numbers up because people are looking for those specifics. Um, a buddy of mine put one out not too long ago. There were in 2 days he had 19 offers on it. It was just a place that looked pretty decent with a pool around that $360,000 range.
Wow,
It's
19
just
offers.
nuts.
Do you see it mostly people moving from around the city, from one place to another, or is it a lot of transplants, people that are coming into the state of Nevada?
The majority of it right now, I'm pretty sure it's the state of Nevada. It's just everybody in the valley that's just fine tuning where they want to be. But you do have a lot of people that are still moving here from out of state, and 70% of that is coming from Southern California. Yeah.
Wow. So, I mean, a realtor is always going to tell you it's the right time to sell. It's always the right time.
Oh,
The time to use my services is now, always.
So,
man.
but off the record, I mean, is it a good time to sell your house right now? I mean, I mean, prices are high, interest rates are low, so people want to buy another home, but I got to go somewhere else. Is it the right time to sell my house? Or
Right. Well,
that-
if you play out the timelines, like what are your overall objectives? How long do you want to be in the valley? How long are you going to stay here overall? In the particular home you're in, if you want to get out within the next couple years, then right now might be a really good opportune time to jump it because, you're in the driver's seat. You're able to call the shots a lot more in this type of market than when it's on a down slide. So if you look at where we are with the market right now, and it's still on the rise, we're typically, when we go into the winter, things start to slow down. Here come the holidays. People don't focus on purchasing as much anymore. And naturally it starts to slow down, and people don't get as much as they normally would, say spring and summer. Now, consider the bigger picture of where we had our biggest downturn. Our last big downturn was probably bottomed out in 2010. Okay. So now we've been on the rise from 2010 to 2020. That's a long upcycle. So naturally, even without the pandemic, you would consider that it would probably start to recorrect itself anyway. Now you have the pandemic in place, and you've got unemployment numbers that are going to start affecting, the whole nation, much less Las Vegas with the hotel and casinos, and they're not all full bore right now. So you really have to take all that into consideration in the next 5, 6, 7 months to see where things are going to be. There's a good chance that we're going to have a downturn in the market.
Now, do you think that downturn is going to be related to the lack of employment opportunities? Because it seems to me that interest rates are going to stay low unless you're thinking that they might begin to tick back up.
I'd imagine that they're going to stay low. There's, especially if we go on a downturn. Could you imagine? I couldn't imagine them going any lower now. But on a downturn, they try to keep things lower for everybody, just so that they have the ability to do something. So those aren't going to be affected. But yes, I think unemployment will play a factor. Now, there are some in the valley that think it's just going to put enough inventory out there to level out the playing field for us when it does come. So in other words, they think it's going to be more of a flatter hit as far as where the purchase price is going to go. But yeah, it's always tough to say where that sucker's going to go. But if I was a betting guy, I would say we're going to get a downturn coming in, so the next year coming in. But how long it'll take to correct, it might be something that corrects itself fairly quickly. So that's what I'm saying. It really depends on what your overall real estate objectives are. Do I see myself leaving it in the next 2 years? Then yes, I would probably be taken off. Could I stay in this place the next 10 years? Okay, maybe I'll just write it out and see where it goes, because it's not going to affect me so bad in 10 years. Overall, real estate, improves around, what did they say, it's around 4%, something like that. If you look at the term for Las Vegas over the last 30 years, it's a steady rise. So if you're going to stay in the game for a long term, then you're ultimately going to win. But
when the market does do a downturn, is there a segment of the market that is impacted more than others? I mean, for example, higher end homes versus, starter homes. Which ones do you think, if we're looking at economic impact, which one of those would be impacted more?
Yeah, because sometimes you think about like the big homes are the only ones that would get impacted by this, or is it only the smaller homes?
well, everybody gets affected, but it's kind of like a sandwich. Everybody at the top, when it starts to go down, you kind of compress that down. The biggest hit comes from the top. There are just not as many buyers in that buyer pool for those bigger homes, so they tend to take a bigger hit initially. Your smallest hit is usually where the median price is, and the median price for us right now is 335. So that's not going to be affected as much. Your lower end homes underneath that, they all take a hit, but they're just not as affected.
Now, Cory and I get this every once in a while, and I'm assuming you get it too. And this is when you provide a professional service, sometimes people start to wonder, why do I need your service? Whether it's like,
Right.
why do I need a lawyer who could maybe I can make those phone calls.
Sure.
What would you tell somebody that said, this is really why you need a realtor to either sell or to buy a home?
Right. And you've got advantages to both sides. On the buyer side, let's take that. The seller is actually paying for any commissions in the state of Nevada. It's different per state. But for our state, the seller pays for it. So buyer representation is actually free unless you're getting charged. There are transaction fees from certain offices that will hit you with a fee to be a part of them that run anywhere between $300 and $700. But still, even if you had to pay that to have representation, to have somebody set up an automated search for you, exactly curtailed to exactly what you're trying to find in the market. And so once they set it up and put it in place, now you're getting dinged every time one fits that criteria. You're going to get an email that says, hey, this one fits your criteria. You got to check it out. From setting that up to getting you pre-qualified with an experienced lender, that's huge, just to have that connection. Because the biggest problem with a lot of buyers is they go out and they get this pre-qualification letter from, Joe Blow financing. And halfway through escrow, the guy looks it up and says, oh, well, we didn't realize you still needed this paperwork. Well, sorry, now we're not going to be able to fund the loan for you. And that's just, it's horrible when that happens. So it's walking you through that process and just lining you up correctly so that way you can get to the finish line. And so you just want to make sure you're touching all those bases. And
it's one of those things where it's like our professional service. It's like there's just so many steps that people don't realize they don't know until all of a sudden sit there biting them.
Yeah, absolutely. The risk mitigate, you just want to make sure that you're taking care of anybody's risk management as much as possible, so that way they don't put themselves in trouble. Making sure you get an inspection done. That's another big one. Everybody's like, why do I want to pay $300 or $500 to do an inspection? The house looks great. Well, you didn't realize that the truss is, halfway corky or the foundation's jacked up. All these things come up out of nowhere. AC units about ready to be shot, and there's another $5 or $7 grand. So it's taking all that stuff into consideration.
So sometimes in our business, somebody will come to us with a case, and we just flat out cannot add value. I cannot. It's on a scale that if I get involved, you potentially end up worse off. So I'll try to give them some advice on how to proceed on their own and handle their case by themselves. It's on a very, very small case. Are there any cases like that for you, or are you better off 100% of the time with a realtor?
I think it's a big investment to move money around at that level. So it's always good to have somebody looking over your shoulder to protect you as you move along. There's family situations where selling to a family member or even just doing refinances. Lots of those situations I'll come in and just give advice or just turn them on to the right person that can help them out. But in any regular transaction, it's worth every cent to be able to have somebody in your corner.
Well, and tell me if I'm wrong, but does it also kind of help head off problems? Because Cory and I've had cases where people come to us, they try to do things on their own, then they
Right.
come to us, and it's a train wreck. And
Yeah.
trying to get that train back on tracks
Sure.
is hard. Do you have to experience that yourself?
Oh, absolutely. So you'll have people that'll want to do the for sale by owner. They'll give that a shot for 2, 3, 4 months, and and then they're frustrated, and then the offers that they get, they're getting these lowball offers from cash buyers, and they're not able to really get it out there and expose it the way that it needs to. And everything's done online these days. And everybody looks at houses every once in a while just because they're curious. But doesn't it drive you nuts when you see a listing up and there's one picture of the front, or you go in there and there's pictures of the dog eating out of the dog bowl, and grandma running around in her skirt and laundry everywhere. You're like, oh.
I think people think it's like people want to see it lived in. I'm like, not really.
No, man, it's worth every cent to make sure that you can have it properly marketed, and part of that is professionally shot. We do stuff where we have a Matterport that goes in that I pay for on my listings, not only on top of high definition photos, where they go in every 6 feet, they're setting this camera down. It does a 360-degree turn. It's got 9 different cameras on it. And so that way, when it's finally done, they walk through the whole house. The computer generates this floor plan that you can just click on any spot in the house and look anywhere you want in the house. It's like walking yourself through it. It's that kind of stuff matters because we're doing all of this stuff online these days.
Do you think there's any fear of, I mean, this comes up in the legal profession every once in a while, somebody says, oh, we're going to be replaced, lawyers are going to be replaced by computers, and everything's going to go online, and we're going to get rid of legal professionals completely. There's sites like Zillow and stuff like that. Is that a concern to real estate professionals, that somehow some website's going to come out there and replace them?
And just to add to that, as you answer that question, is Zillow really all that accurate? I mean, people tell me all the time, oh, my Zillow shows this. And I'm always curious, I'm like, is that even adequate?
They use a basic algorithm. They're using, lots of times you'll have homes in an area that's, especially Vegas is on tract housing, right? A lot of it is. So sometimes it's fairly accurate, to be fair. But then you'll have areas where you'll have a master plan community next to an area that's not as nice. It can't differentiate the difference. And so you really have to go in there to fine tune, to have somebody really do a market analysis to see what's what that they're looking at, where they just can't do it with numbers, especially when it comes to improvements on a house. There's no way they can even get close.
And if there was, and this is, I guess, a little bit of like free counsel for someone who's watching this, and that is, what is the thing that you see most often with people who want to sell their house, who think it's going to add so much value to their home, but you're like, yeah, you really wasted money. It's not adding that much. Do you have that? Do you have like certain things that routinely kind of people come to you and they have this add-on that they did and that they thought was just going to be this brilliant add-on to their house, and you're looking at it like you just wasted $10,000 or whatever?
Yeah, sometimes, I always tell people, if you get an upgrade on your house, do it for yourself, because you're not going to get the value out of it when you go to sell. It might help sell your house quicker. And of course, it will add some value, like pools are a good example. So on a pool, say a $70,000 pool, usually you're going to figure about half of it you're going to get back on an appraisal, typically. So but it'll help sell that sucker real quick. And in this type of market, you might even get somebody to pay above market value just because you're going to get so many offers on the property. So, and it just depends, of course, how you market it and get it out there. But no, I know what you're saying. Yeah. People are constantly like, oh yeah, when I bought this place, I put in the granite countertops, the marble floors, and well, it depends on the builder too. A lot of people don't realize what you added onto your property when you bought it as a new home, those type of upgrades, Well, many of your neighbors did the same thing. So it just depends on the level of home that you're buying too at that time.
So as I take your answer, it's if you're going to do one of those add-ons, do it for your life, for your living in the house,
Yeah.
not as some investment in the resale.
Right, right, exactly. Now that's talking like a basic home. If you're talking about flippers, flippers is a whole different ballgame.
Right.
There's certain things that you're doing if you're trying to flip a property that are just quick returns. Like flooring's usually fairly cheap that you can, get on a bulk rate and get something in there that'll look really good. Painting is another one that you'll win on real quick. So those two basic ones you can really, put value up on your house.
But I would think, and tell me if I'm wrong, but it would seem like if flippers was almost like a whole nother show. It's like people who try to do this on their own, they're going to flip some house. I've seen people who've tried that and they get themselves incredibly sideways. So I'm like, it seems like that can be a lot of danger.
Yeah, I mean, if you found something for a very good value, you just have to factor in how much it's going to cost you up front, closing costs, down payment, all of that stuff, versus once you finally get it repaired, then how much is it going to cost you to put it back out on the market? So you have to have a professional really sit down with you and analyze the numbers to see if it's going to make sense.
I think there's too many shows that make it seem so simple.
Yeah.
And so it's like flipping's the way to make all this money.
And it's spending so much money. Like they're spending way more than it says they're spending for the stuff they're doing. There's no way anyone would ever do what they're asking.
I see all these people doing this on these shows, and I'm thinking this has got to be putting people in the poorhouse. Somebody watched this show and went bankrupt.
Yeah.
Vegas, you can do it in Vegas, but there's a lot of competition for flippers, without a doubt.
So Tim, what I mean, if I want to list my house, you do that. What else can you do for somebody? We're trying to refer somebody to you. What else do you do besides just listing their home and selling it, or help or representing them as a buyer? Anything else you do for them?
Lots of times people call me on a regular basis just to get market values. Whenever they need somebody that's related to real estate, they call me for, landscapers, painters, plumbers. I get people that are constantly calling me for stuff that doesn't have anything to do with real estate as far as me making a transaction happen, but they know I'm affiliated with so many other people. So lots of times it's just advice or turning them on to somebody else. Right now it's low inventory, still on the rise. Now, however long that's going to hang in there, you always want to catch it before it starts to slide. And right now we're in a great spot. And one of the biggest indicators for me is I track the inventory and the days on market to see how hot it is. And I think right now, I just pulled the numbers this morning, and the ones that are going under contract are within 18 days. That's moving pretty quick. So the single family homes that have gone under contract in the last month, within 18 days, they're under contract. That's moving.
So Tim, tell us about yourself. How long have you been in real estate in Southern Nevada?
Yeah, so I got licensed in Las Vegas in 1999. And back then I was a young kid going to UNLV and working at the Hard Rock. And so I did both jobs for a long time. I worked the valet at night and real estate during the day. And that was a blast.
That's a worker.
Hard Rock.
That's right there.
It was a nutty place, but eventually I ended up working more real estate and just getting more and more involved, and fell in love with it. It's, I love helping people along that process. And I worked on some top buyer teams, and I was fortunate enough to be under some really bright brokers in the Valley. And so, man, did I learn a lot. During the downturn of the last market with short sales, I had a real estate partner, and him and I at any given time had 30 short sales going. And we got good enough to where we had ends with Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Chase, to where if a file got stuck, we could call somebody in the uppers and go, hey, we're having trouble with this one. Can you help us work it out? And so we ended up training a lot of other real estate agents on how to process short sales. And so, yeah, man, I've always been one of the top producers in any group that I jumped on board with. But yeah, I love to stay involved. You know, gotta know what you're talking about to help the community. You can't just jumping out there.
So you saw the boom in like 2004, 2005 when, I mean, we owned a home back then, and people would send us unsolicited letters asking us to sell them our home. You know, we're like, well, we kind of live here, so thanks. But
Yeah.
I mean, and the prices just went crazy for a couple of years, and then that was shortly before the bottom fell out and everything happened. So you've seen the boom, the bust, and then this gradual, you know, creep up. So you've seen pretty much the gamut of the Las Vegas market, really.
And all in between, you know, been a blast.
So
And you can help people from start to finish, right? Someone comes to you, you can make sure that they get the inspection that needs to be done, the mortgage lined up. You can do all those things for them.
Yeah, help them from start to finish. You know, so for a buyer, just getting them lined up, sometimes it's good 6-9 months out to just have a starting point of have that initial conversation with the lender, you know, just to see where things are sitting. So that way, the closer that they get, you take out any probabilities of something jumping in the way that could, you know, keep them from getting to the finish line. But yeah, I've got people that I work with for, you know, one or 2 years even out before they even purchase.
So if somebody wants to reach out to you, what's the best way to contact Tim Low, Realtor
Tim
Extraordinaire?
Low. So you can call me at 702-245-8569. It actually stands for 245 TLOW, TLOW. I've had that number forever.
Nice.
And
I'm going to start calling you T-Lo from now on.
when I worked at the Hard Rock, most people thought that was my first name.
And we'll have your information and with clickable links down in the description of this show. So I just want to make sure that anybody who's watching knows that the links to Tim's website, Tim's contact information will all be in the description.
Perfect. Yeah, timlowrealestate.com. No, I appreciate it, guys.
Thanks for hanging out with us, Tim. Appreciate your
Thanks for
insights.
being with us. This is
Yeah.
actually great, helpful information. Well, it's great having you on our show. Thanks, Tim.
Thanks, Tim. We'll see ya.
Yeah, thanks,
All right.
guys. Appreciate it.
Be safe.
Back at you.
Later.